What's a sign that a movie is going to be bad? I drink her milk, Steak said. Bonus points if the actor's last name isn't the real famous named actor. Example, Quentin Tarantino recently was on WTF talking about how his estranged father and Al Pacino's estranged father got together and made a few direct-to-video B-movies. So they get to put Tarantino Pacino at the top of the poster for marketing. Then you see two random old dudes. Alpha Terminal said, "This is hilarious. Alan Smithy, also Alan Smithy, is an official pseudonym used by film directors who wish to disown a project." In 1998, the film An Alan Smithy Film, Burn Hollywood Burn was released, in which a man named Alan Smithy, Eric Idle, wishes to disavow a film he has directed, but is unable to do so because the only pseudonym he is permitted to use is his own name. The film was directed by Arthur Hiller, who reported to the DGA that producer Joe Esterhaus had interfered with his creative control, and successfully removed his own name from the film, so Alan Smithy was credited instead. The film was a commercial and critical failure, released in only 19 theaters, grossing only $45,779 in the United States with a budget of about $10 million, and Rotten Tomatoes reports an aggregate critical rating of only 8% positive. The movie also won 5 Golden Raspberry Awards, including Worst Picture, at that year's event. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Alan_Smithy. Mad Dog 2578 said, "My mom chooses it as a family movie. She only does this when she feels neglected and picks movies where the mom has recently died or is dying and the children only realize how important she was when it is too late. Every single time." Admiral Donuts said, "I know we've been at odds ever since I chose to follow in Dad's footsteps as the kind of lawyer that is generally unlikable, but can't we put that aside and discuss this situation? And by situation I mean the mother's jewels that you don't think I'm entitled to." Netflix and ZZZZZ said, "Those jewels are the only reason I'm visiting from New York or LA, where I normally am an architect. I know you want the jewels to impress the barista, but I need the jewels or I won't be taken seriously at the Architects Ball tomorrow. And my old boss, the president of architecture, will be there." Eidman 799 said, "The president of architecture? You mean the same president of architecture that was responsible for the design of some old house or building that has a lot of sentimental value to someone in this movie that they're planning on tearing down? That president of architecture?" Here fourth comment said, "I remember being really into one of their Netflix originals and a key plot point was that one of the characters had a missing brother they were trying to find. All the behind-the-scenes stuff was hyping up the episode, saying it's so emotional. The character has a breakdown thinking their brother is dead. And of course Netflix ruined it by making the preview picture for that episode the two characters reuniting. I still haven't forgave them." Wiki Summarizer Bot said, "Oscar season. The Oscar season is the time period in which Hollywood studios release or promote the films they consider most likely to be critically acclaimed, hoping to win at the Academy Awards. Oscar season usually begins in the late fall and early winter, around November, and ends on December 31st of that year. Although the date in which the summer blockbuster season ends, and the Oscar season begins, are ambiguous, and dependent on the year. FAQ opt-out of subreddit GitHub, downvote to remove V1.5. Ganrock said, "Morbius was moved from October, prime time for a vampire movie, to January. Doesn't exactly fill me with hope. Edit, I know that COVID affected movie schedules. However, October was Morbius' third release date. The second release date would have been last week in June. Venom 2, which was originally going to release after Morbius, moved to September 2021. Morbius was moved to January 2022 after 007 No Time to Die was moved to October 2021. I just don't find confidence in releasing a movie that is teasing greater connections to Spider-Man and the MCU in the month where movies go to die, especially if Venom 2 was moved forward." Irriator 12345 said, "Whenever they start promoting their movie by constantly comparing it to one of the all-time greats in the genre. If you are a fantasy movie and you have to state in the advertising that you are great just like Lord of the Rings, it makes me think your movie is probably shit. Because you are not LOTR?" Undecided Lemon said, It's been in production for too long. There's always a reason. For a recent example, Chaos Walking. It changed screenwriter, director and production company so many times over 10 years but was sold on as been a Charlie Kaufman movie starring Daisy Ridley and Tom Holland. Kaufman left in 2013. Ridley and Holland filmed it over years due to so many reshoots and failed screenings. Then Lionsgate said the negative reviews were shocking to them. Really? Drenter said. Yeah, but that was because Cameron is a perfectionist and drove everyone crazy with it, not because they kept changing the writer, director, producer, etc. For The Abyss, it also didn't help that Cameron and the producer, Gale and Hurd, got married just before deciding to work on it as their next picture, got separated during pre-production, and got divorced after principal photography. As a side note, Cameron based the character of Lindsay on Hurd. Like Savenchikin said, my brother just tricked me into watching this movie. He was like, hey, wanna see a movie? And it wasn't until I got to the theater that I thought to ask which movie it was. But joke's on him. He had to sit through the entire thing too. Corno said. You see it more and more in the video game industry as well, where they either don't give them review copies early, only give them for a specific platform, or won't let them publish anything until a certain date. Cheesegoat said. And she has a boyfriend but is having a hard time connecting with him. Her mom calls her and persuades her to visit and come home. Hijinks ensue when she meets her Malay friend from her childhood who works at her parents' country-style business. Also her diverse gang of friends from the big city come down to rescue her from various awkward situations. Substandard Joshin said. Fleshing it out would have made it more obvious that their plan to stop him didn't actually exist. Palpatine cheated death and is now alive and has retroactively driven the plot of the entire sequel trilogy despite total physical annihilation on the Death Star II, so we must stop him by killing and totally physically annihilating his new zombie form. That will surely definitely work this time and requires no additional thought. KS4Cookie said. Are you my husband? Unfortunately he also argues with me over what a good movie is. He is notorious for liking complete shit movies. Everyone in a room will agree it's bad and he will think it's amazing and that we are being overly critical. Or if it's just me and him he will try to prove me wrong by outing up review sites. He is always wrong. A lot of his favorite movies are 10 or less on Rotten Tomatoes. Poor guy. Festivat said. My mom, who knows I'm not a Christian, have you seen Low-Budget Christian Film? It's a true story about a kid who died and went to heaven and then was revived and tells everyone God exists. It's a great movie. Then I Google it and find out the kid grew up and said his father pressured him into saying all that stuff. Thanks, Mom. I'll check it out tonight. Random Redditor 12345 said. TBF Artemis Fowl was the absolute epitome of a dumpster fire because it stayed in production way too long and it went through so many hands that they just lost sight of the basic premise of the source material along with the plot, the characters and the setting, as well as what makes movies good. Every review I saw from someone who didn't read the books was maybe it'll be better to those who did. And no, it was worse. So much worse. A huge part of the main character's arc was her being the first female in her division. Movie makes her boss a woman too. Mick is supposed to be a criminal mastermind who independent figured out Fairy's existence and sussed out how to catch one all by himself. Dad tells him all about it and was on very good terms with the other Mick's father until his mysterious disappearance. Mick's mom is supposed to be depressed and insane due to her husband being missing, and a massive plot point is at the end when the criminal mastermind Mick trades back half the ransom gold to get her cured. Mom, who, villain of movie, isn't introduced until book 2, also replaces Russian moms for kidnapping his dad. MacGuffin of movie, never mentioned or hinted at in any book. Random Redditor 12345 said. Criminal mastermind Mick's ingenious way of escaping containment force field that his fairy's ace in the hole which nobody, not even the fairy, ever figured out. Bomb it. Criminal mastermind Mick is supposed to be ever serious, uncoordinated, out of shape, and pale, and throw him on a surfboard having fun. Bodyguard whose name is only learned as he draws his dying grade in book 3. Everyone knows his first name now, just don't call him the butler. Highly fit, 30s mid-40s, bald, Eurasian bodyguard. Let's make him black with gray hair. I could go on. Flutterbike said. When it is 10 minutes and then you have said what the fuck under your breath 5 or more times. When the opening credits tell you a really interesting story. When the opening scene involves a shootout with so many cuts you literally cannot see what is happening, or who is shooting at whom. When the narrator sounds bored. Cloistered Around said, if Disney would put any freaking consequences in their movies they could be alright, but it's always the syrupy happy end and it just doesn't work for me anymore. This didn't used to be an issue. Hercules lost a godhood he worked so hard for. Mufasa stays dead. Hell, even freaking Ariel who got everything she wanted was permanently separated from her family. Modern Disney would have included a scene of them all hanging out at a pool party or something, just to make it clear everyone, but the villain, had a happy ending. Can't have any consequences or repercussions here. Kids are supposed to enjoy, not feel. A Marmalade Sandwich said, ever notice how the protagonist has no part in resolving the plot anymore? Aladdin doesn't outsmart Jafar now, the genie does. Belle doesn't break the curse, the witch does. The Banks family don't solve their own problems and not need Mary Poppins anymore. She does everything herself then leaves. Mulan doesn't work hard to overcome her difficulties, she's just always been able to do that now. Only magic and power are capable of winning, plucky heroes can't. So, not only are those happy endings free of any repercussions, the heroes don't even earn them. Beagabumner said, lots of kid movies do that nowadays. I call it the stay-in-your-lane narrative where the plot basically boils down to special people do special things. If you're not special then don't try to be special. The Incredibles is a good example, where the villain of the story is a guy that wants to give everybody superpowers. Now obviously the way he goes about it is objectively evil, but the movie presents the mere notion of giving everyone superpowers as objectively evil as well. If I was prone to conspiracies, I'd start to think these movies are used to impress on children not to try and improve their lives, but to simply accept their lot in life as serfs to the upper class. But I'm not, so it's probably just a coincidence. Sibrawiki said, well, look at what the basketball part of that scene was. It was the two of them standing there, dribbling a tiny drop, stealing the ball back and forth a couple of times, shaking their asses, and rubbing up against each other for most of the scene, then a random almost dunk at the end, from basically standing still. With a bunch of kids standing there watching that train wreck and cheering the whole time. If that's honestly what that scene was supposed to be, then chopping it up so you can't quite see how bad it's supposed to be is the best thing someone could have done to that abomination. JADW27 said, this is the right answer. Why does anyone still hire him? I'm not trying to be internet petty here. I've just never encountered another human who thinks this man has an ounce of talent. Stories of his ashlery abound. And yet he has a talk show and routinely gets cast in comedies and musicals. I seriously want to know if anyone sees his name on a poster and thinks, oh, I'll go see that because James Corden is in it. Again, not kidding at all here. If you're a Corden lover, please let me know that you exist and why you like this man. Do you think he's funny? Do you like his singing voice? What is his appeal? JADW27 Satan Haynes said, I remember seeing that and thinking this is going to be trash, and it won't ever matter, it'll just print money. But I also couldn't figure out how they had like 30 unrelated, unless they were competing, licensed property characters in the trailer, so I was like what the hell is in those Lego set contracts? Okay, I'm in. So I saw it in theaters with a kid, and I was sitting through everything is awesome like well, this is my life now, and then shortly after that, I was like okay, I could listen to Morgan Freeman for 90 minutes, this won't be so bad. Then they didn't play everything is awesome in loop for 90 minutes. And somehow or other there was an actual, real story in there that I cared about. Nothing made sense and everything made sense. It was just like watching myself play with Lego as a kid. I'm still sort of in awe at how well it turned out. This is the right answer. Why does anyone still hire him? I'm not trying to be internet petty here. I've just never encountered another human who thinks this man has an ounce of talent. Stories of his ashlery abound. And yet he has a talk show and routinely gets cast in comedies and musicals. I seriously want to know if anyone sees his name on a poster and thinks, oh, I'll go see that because James Corden is in it. Again, not kidding at all here. If you're a Corden lover, please let me know that you exist and why you like this man. Do you think he's funny? Do you like his singing voice? What is his appeal? Apex in the Rough said, A comedian who hasn't been funny in 10 years stars in it and plays multiple roles. Looking at you, Sandler, Murphy, and Myers. It's clearly being released in a desperate attempt to capitalize on a different studio's success. WB keeps trying to rival the MCU with DC films, but their meddling repeatedly ruins them. Also, the Divergent series trying too hard to be Hunger Games. It's a sequel-prequel spin-off that stars none of the major pullers from the first one. G.I. Joe. Blatantly bad recasting to the point where you wonder if it would have been better to just drop the character. Mummy 3. Miracle Resurrection plot devices because they couldn't think of any way to make a new character instead. WW84, F&F. It has anything to do with Steven Seagal. A Peaceful Warrior said, to be fair, with Game of Thrones it took nearly a full decade for its decline to come to fruition. Also, that was sort of a go-to gambit among prestige shows for a while. Front-load the first season with sex and or nudity to get viewers, then dial it back once they've got people hooked on the story. HBO and Netflix both did it quite a lot. I think my favorite example is Glow, including a locker room scene with topless Alison Brie, something like 5 minutes into the first episode. Then never again. There's your boobies, now shut up and sit down. Shitty Way Fuxo said. Not saying it's a bad film, actually it's the opposite. But in the original Conan the Barbarian film they used the orchestral scores to fill in a lot of emotion over parts without dialogue. Because the main cast weren't actors, I mean Conan's crew other than Mako, they fashioned the movie around that. So the end result is small bits of dialogue written as iconic as possible, and giving the bigger monologues to James Earl Jones. The soundtrack basically tells the story when you listen to it. James Earl Jones has said the end result was like a mythological story.